Hi everybody, John McLeish here. So this week we're doing, we're gonna do it this time. I promise we're gonna do it. We're doing the Joker episode. This is the episode we're doing it. Right now, that means if you haven't seen the film by now, I would say just skip this episode. Don't worry about it. Next week's episode is gonna be primo. It's a really good episode, I promise. Right? Maybe I can see into the future. Maybe I can't. Maybe you don't know our production schedules. Fuck you. So it's going to be good. Is all I can say. So maybe just wait a week. Otherwise, stick around. If you have seen the movie, we're going to be talking about it, and we're going to be talking really in depth. And we feel like the best way for us to do it is to get into spoiler territory. It's just really, that's just the best way for us to really kind of go deep and really talk about some of these questions that we have and really get into sort of the nuts and bolts of this movie is to do it in a spoilery way. Now, I should also say at this point, this is your third warning. Okay, there's a warning in the title of the episode. There's a warning in the description of the episode, and I'll probably throw one. I haven't done the advertising yet, but I'm probably going to throw one into there too. So there'll be one on Instagram, which you should totally follow us at pint.party. It's a great Instagram. And so there'll be 3 to 4 spoiler warnings at this point. So if you're going to keep listening and be like, you know what, I'm good. I don't want you getting back at me and bitching at me saying, oh, bro, I didn't know there were spoilers, because at this point, it's Darwinism. Okay? It's Darwinism. And with that, welcome to Pint Party, a podcast designed to turn a beer and a chat into a tax write-off. I'm your host, John McLeish. Joining me this week is two of the 3 gimmick boys who also happen to like movies, Ricki Needs and David Yang. Boys, welcome.
What up? Why are you not saying anything?
I was waiting for you.
Oh, what the fuck?
I was being polite.
They were being
shit.
polite.
Okay, no, fair enough. No,
Ladies first.
I'm the boss.
Ladies first.
Oh, well, boss first, really.
Oh, you can suck my dick, cunt.
Good moment, everyone. John, how are you?
I've had a few drinks. I've done my best to kind of like. I mean, this is Pint Party. We typically have a few drinks, but we've had a few extra drinks this evening, and like I wasn't expecting us to have the extra jug of beer, and I'm kind of feeling it.
Hey, I said the 3 of us could put it away in 20 minutes, and we did it in like 22. So
we did, yeah. But that comes at a toll, and so I'm caffeinating myself to try and sober up as quick as I can, because I do not want a repeat of the episode 6 incident. But I feel like I'm better because I'm prepared. Right, I'm doing my best. I'm working at it. Right. So I'm going to try and take a little bit more of a back seat to kind of prevent some issues, but. Straight off the bat, we're talking about the Joker movie, and this is...
Let's be transparent. This is our second attempt at it.
Yeah, come on. Let's just be honest with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely is. So you might have seen like last week's episode in the description. I said, listen, the computer said no. We had a bit of a fuck up. It was my fault. It was my fault. It was absolutely my fault.
That's fine. It happens.
It happens. So yeah, we're doing it again. We've done it before. We've talked about it before. But that being said, though, now we've rehearsed it. Is the best way to look at it. Look at it with a similar... Yeah. We've rehearsed
Glass half full is what we are.
Glass half full.
And we've had an extra week to marinate.
Really marinate.
To
absolutely.
Really just,
And it's really let the movie marinate too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And of quote-unquote comic book movies, which I don't want to call this a comic book movie, but in the strictest sense of the word, it is.
By definition.
By definition, it is. But this is of every comic book movie that has really ever come out, this is the one that really requires you to sit down and have a think about it, right? Iron Man is a fucking kick-ass movie. You don't have to think about it. All right?
Yeah.
Avengers Endgame, fucking amazing. Holy shit. That thing stroked my cock for 3 hours. It was amazing. Don't have to think about it.
Well, because it goes on to what, and this is how transparent we're going to be. When we did the first recording, what you said was, and it really, really, really resonates, the idea it's technically a comic book movie by literal definition of the fact that it's based on a comic book IP.
Absolutely.
But it's not produced, it's not shot, it's not story written wise like any other comic book movie we know.
It follows none of the conventions.
It doesn't fit into what we now deem as the comic book genre.
Absolutely.
Which has been predominantly dominated by the MCU and what DC has attempted with the DCEU.
Well,
right?
even when we consider DC movies, which this is a DC movie, like the closest comparison would be the Dark Knight trilogy. I would argue it is outside of that too.
Yeah.
Right? The Dark Knight trilogy even then kind of fits into some of the conventions of a comic book film, and this one doesn't even do that.
Because that in its regard... it's not obviously the first of the comic book genres, which it's a loose genre right now, right? But it's one of the first of the comic book genres. But even then, you look at that in essentially, it's a standalone.
Yeah.
It's very taken away from a universe. It didn't build a universe.
No.
It really just followed the story of Batman.
did a little bit of universe building.
But it only followed the universe of Batman. Just Batman and who happened to confront Batman in his journey of Batman at that time.
It built a Batman universe for that trilogy of films. It wasn't designed to have tie-ins.
It wasn't designed
outside films.
Whereas with Iron Man, it was a very deliberate. Okay, we're building Marvel, the universe. Here, so it's going to be inclusive.
When Nick Fury shows up mid credits and is like, "Hey, join the Avengers." Superman didn't show up to like fucking little mini Bruce Wayne and be like, "Hey, give it like 10 years, but Justice League maybe." So obviously from that point it is a standalone. I think it will remain a standalone. I don't think there is.
I hope it does.
There is a Matt Reeves.
Nolan would not
the
let
Robert
it touch.
Pattinson Batman that's coming.
We're just talking about Joker at this point.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're still Joker. Well, because there's talk obviously of the idea of they're open to.
Look, like I said, we've given it an extra week, and this thing is fucking barreling towards $1 billion at the box office.
Yeah,
and it's going to be
set to be the first R-rated billion.
Super hard for them at DC and Warner Brothers to be like, do we want to stop at one?
Yeah.
Do we want to stop at one?
That's going to be the conversation.
It's the conversation, and look, the conversation will happen.
100% they are having it right now behind closed doors.
But here's the thing. Here's where that conversation should go, because there is something to be said about having a sequel. But here's the thing. I don't think they should do a straight sequel. I don't think they should be a Joker 2 Electric Boogaloo, right? What it should be is like, okay, look at this formula that we've built, which is serious comic book film. Right, this is what we've put. This formula we should absolutely make more of, because it differentiates ourselves in the marketplace, which is something that DC has been struggling with against Marvel. Yep. Right, it differentiates themselves in the marketplace. It gives them, but while remaining similar enough within the niche of comic book films that they can cash in on that crowd.
That's where I've said it, like, obviously I've never said it on the podcast, but I've been, because I love the Joker IP and I love the Joker Batman dynamic, and I've been very vocal about the idea of like, okay, MCU has killed it the last 10 years. No shit, no one's going to deny it, right?
Absolutely.
They've literally created a genre.
That's it.
Right? But they will never beat DC for the one sole reason, for the fact that they don't have Batman and Joker. Batman and Joker is embedded on pure, almost psychology, right? It's a story that starts with psychology that just happens to turn into a comic book, right? Whereas Marvel is a comic book based on the fact that we just live in these fantasy worlds of superheroes, these larger-than-life characters that travel the universe and fight bigger and bigger powers. Batman and Joker is not about fighting bigger and bigger powers. It's about the fight of a psychological, the difference between two mindsets, the difference between two ideologies in a city. Right, and we said it last time on the podcast, and it still obviously rings so true, which is the biggest thing about why Batman and Joker, no matter what you do with it, you just announce you're making a movie about it, and it will grab people, because it's that goddamn simple. It is just a psychology between these two. We know they're human. No, obviously some derivatives of comics have made Batman quite have essentially likened him to Superman, that his powers of money can make him strong, like really, really strong. Man, and then that Joker can fall into vats of like chemicals that make him superhuman as well, right?
I mean, even the Nolan movies had him, he has a knee brace and now he can kick through a brick wall.
Yeah.
Like obviously a movie that has like Batman starting on a cane, you kind of have to like work your way pretty quickly through like, how do we get him back to being Batman? So from that standpoint, like it's embedded in enough realism. Like the Nolan trilogy is like the most.
It's still even realistic in like realism.
Yeah, Batman, the Batfleck, Ben Affleck Batman. That dude could punch dudes into walls and make their heads explode.
But
it's too much.
Because they had to build that within the universe that was already occupied by Superman.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a movie that's a movie that ends with like them fighting fucking Doomsday.
Yeah,
you have to establish a Batman that kind of is beyond. Like all he did was lift some fucking tires and pull some chains, and all of a sudden he's like going one-on-one with Superman.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
But like Superman, and this is not going to be the Superman cast, we'll just quickly touch it. Superman is what's good with DC and bad with DC. It's bad for DC for the sole reason that they've deliberately written a person that you can add powers no matter what, because it just falls within who he is. Yep. Right? So he has unlimited potential with also unlimited consequences to it. Whereas MCU and the Marvel comics, they've given their superheroes, whilst so strong, still limits. Right? Yeah. But that's why Batman and Joker, you almost essentially take it out of DC in the sense of like, it's its own thing, because it's superhero and comic book in the essence of like just how it follows narrative beats.
Yeah.
But they're not superheroes. They're not. Like Batman is like so imbued in like moral in like differences in his own head. Like there's been some articles I've seen that's come out being like, if they were to do another Joker, obviously build it around the Batman dynamic, but make Batman seem like this this very confused vigilante, someone who isn't superhero by definition, right? Which essentially is like what Nolan tried to do with his trilogy. It's like you have Superman, who's a perfect superhero because he's moral, like he's lawfully good.
Yeah,
really, for the most part of his comic book
he has a moral center, and also he can punch a building over.
Yeah, Batman is always
Batman has shades of grey, and he'll die from a fall from more than 20 feet high.
Yeah, and it's that shades of grey.
Yeah.
That makes DC like they'll always win with the Batman Joker dynamic.
That's always going to be the thing between Marvel and DC, though. We've seen it in like pretty much, aside from a few good exceptions in the Marvel universe, it's like the heroes are so well fleshed out and so well realized, but the villains just fucking suck. Terrible. Like when I was reviewing movies on YouTube, I had a thing where I literally, anytime we had like a bad villain in a Marvel movie, I called it Malekith syndrome, because who the fuck remembers Malekith from Thor: The Dark World?
Yeah.
Such a fucking boring and like not well thought out villain. So anytime there was a shit villain, I'm like, this movie has Malekith syndrome. That was the thing that I would bring up constantly.
Like that.
Yeah, because like I think Guardians was like one of the first or second Marvel movies I reviewed, and I was like, look, even borderline, what's his face?
Ronan.
Thank you. I can't even fucking remember his name. Had borderline Malekith syndrome because aside from his connection to Thanos, he really didn't have that much to do in the movie except for he's the guy holding the stone we need. That was his purpose.
Yeah.
The ones that were really
one-dimensional.
The ones that were really fleshed out were Killmonger, Thanos.
But even Thanos needed a series of movies and really to get him.
He really
and
did.
he needed a like if you were to just introduce Thanos in that first Avengers as like prime bad guy, he wouldn't have made much sense. He needed to have that allure about him of higher power taking over universe.
Yeah.
Then that was built on. It had to be built on over multiple movies.
Whereas like with DC, the Rogues Gallery is fucking epic. Like Batman's Rogues Gallery alone is home to some of the most iconic villains and well fleshed out villains in comic book history. So like, I know we brought this up, and I think you brought it up as well, is like having people take shots at like one-shots at movies where it's like, this is just a movie to be this movie. Joker shouldn't need a sequel. Joker should stand on its own as a movie that's probably going to go down in history as making $1 billion and being one of the best and well-reviewed comic book with big quotation marks around it movies we've ever had. If you have a trend where you completely fuck off the Marvel system of having everything tied in, and you bring in people with a vision, and let's face it, Todd Phillips' vision was to make a Scorsese movie. He did a bloody good job of it. But if you bring in directors who have a vision for either one or a small selection of characters in the DC universe, and you can craft a story that doesn't have to tie into everything else, then DC can find the niche in the marketplace where they can be like, all right, let's put all of our creative power at this moment in time behind this. Make it really fucking good, and then move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, how do we tie this into every single movie we've done and every single movie that will come ahead of it?
But that's what's also another interesting thing about this Joker, specifically origin film. One, for the fact that like it's the first time it's been done in cinema. Joker's always had a very ambiguous origin story. So that's like already right off the bat when Todd Phillips announced he was doing this, it was like controversy because you're going to make an origin story for Joker.
Yeah.
But now that we've had now that it's come out and we can do this spoiler kind of stuff, and now that a lot of people have done like analysis of it, it's a perfect origin film for so many reasons because it's still very ambiguous to Arthur Fleck's origin. Right?
Yeah,
because there's been an Easter egg has come out. I don't know if you've seen.
What have we got?
All of the clocks in the film, their time doesn't change. They're all stuck at the exact same time. Nothing in this film, in my opinion, is ever done without accident. With accident.
No, of course, yeah.
Right? So I believe a deliberate choice is made to make them all at the same time because it ties in with the big theory that, and I say theory,
it's all in his head.
It's all in his head.
Yeah.
Essentially, he is just recounting at the end of the film the fact that and especially when he does a laugh and she goes, "What's the joke?" You wouldn't understand. It's the understanding of you just don't know who I am.
Okay. Oh, is that from the, it's all in his head? From like, this is his recounting of events that took place
Exactly.
to get him to this
It could
point.
still be something that has already taken place.
Okay, because I hate the trope of it was all in his head the
Oh
entire
yeah,
time.
I hate that. And every movie that has done ended with "Oh, I've just woken up and it was a dream" has fucking busted. All right?
Yeah.
It's a stupid concept that should be fucking done with.
But if this
this
is
is done
his-
masterfully in the sense that it could
it's-
still be real,
His version of events.
but it's
Yeah.
his version of events,
It's
which
his
you've
retelling
already
of the story.
seen
Okay.
sprinkled all throughout the film.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously with the Zazie Beetz character.
Yeah.
And we talked about this in the first one. We're going to say this a lot, but it was when did you guys pick up on her being?
And I'm not going to lie to you, my first view didn't right
Okay.
until he walked into the apartment.
Yes, and that was I think it was the moment for most people
Yeah,
to be
that
like,
was when it was deliberately designed. That
okay,
way.
Yeah.
we need to establish that this is not. And I said in the first one, like, I picked it up during that first scene when she knocks on his door, just because of the way, and it was a very subtle thing, but the way his mannerisms changed when he was talking to her at the door, compared to when he was how he was in every other scene, leading up to him becoming the Joker, which really I think we established in the first one was like pretty much when he killed his workmate and then went to the TV studio. That was like.
Well, I
in
think
there-
we all
in
have
there
different. It's
somewhere-
around from
in
that
there- in
point
there
to
somewhere.
at least when he got hit by the ambulance. You pick that anywhere between there and you're
Yeah.
right.
It's
right,
like
in my
it's like
opinion.
he becomes the Joker then. Before
Yeah.
then, he's still just Arthur Fleck. So if you kind of like, he acted so differently that it stood out to me. But then again, I'm someone who like
You're attuned to it.
I'm attuned to it. I've been reviewing films for a long time, so something like that to me, like it stood out, and I was like,
But I
okay,
think-
this interaction isn't natural. He wouldn't behave this way in this interaction, I think, because all of a sudden he went from being like, the minute she was like, "Are you following me today?" I was like, "Oh fuck, here we go." But then the fact that he managed to turn it around and get her laughing by the end, I was like, that.
And
that
you're
is-
100% onto
That
something.
is how he ideally would have that conversation end.
Yeah.
But to me, someone who is obviously a single mother who has a daughter in a city that isn't a very good city, she would confront him and tell him to fuck off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's how that conversation
Realist him in that-
should
yeah.
go.
Yeah.
It didn't, and that to me was the red flag of like, okay, I'm going to watch every interaction they have from now on very carefully, and every interaction, especially the comedy club, because we hear that first joke when he finally gets it out. The second joke, which is then the joke that's played on the TV show, we never hear that reaction in the moment because it fades out to music and then all of a sudden we have them walking down the street. We never hear his delivery and we never hear the crowd response because all he has or all he hears is what he wants to hear in that situation. He did a good job. And then when it's shown on the TV show when he's in his mum's hospital room, he's excited because he thought he did a good job. He thought he delivered that line really well and the crowd laughed. But in reality, it didn't happen. So to me, that entire scene, because she's in the club, once again, big quotation marks, she's in the club when he's doing that routine. And then they're walking down the street after the end of his set. So that, again, was a big red flag. I'm like, okay, that scene obviously didn't go the way he thought it did. And we were presented with. So you're right. This could be a case of him being in the mental hospital this entire time, recounting this story to his therapist, but it's his version of events. And the version of events that actually took place could be very, very different to what actually took place.
And that's why.
So that's why you keep that mystique of he can have a very, very ambiguous origin. This is one version. This may be one of his versions.
And it could very well be the origin because it
could be,
still
yeah.
might be Arthur Fleck post Asylum that we still see in, and that's why I believe it's one of the best origins because it encapsulates a lot of what most of the comics have done.
Yeah.
And then most of what the comics have done after Joker has become the Joker, right?
Yeah.
So we use Nolan's as the best example, as the best Joker right now.
Yeah.
So that chaotic guy who's fighting for the soul of Gotham, right? He's very clear motive to understand. His motive in that film is that everyone is crazy inherently,
Yeah.
all right? And I'm just trying to get it out of you, Batman. I know you're crazy. And I'm just going to keep poking at you and you're eventually going to crack.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's always his belief, right? His belief is in everyone's heads that they're all mad, right? And that's what Nolan's Joker was going for.
Yeah.
You can essentially also see that in this Joker origin here. This idea that because he was being able to be pushed to such a degree, he believed, and then when seeing that other people also respond to his acts,
Yeah.
it already bleeds into him that other people are like me. So if other people are like me, most people can be like me, which might eventually become a catalyst for him becoming Nolan's Joker, right?
Yep.
It could also be another catalyst for him becoming Jared Leto's Joker. It's a Joker origin that can fit into other Joker molds going out, right? Because it always leads into that ambiguity, right?
Yeah,
Let's say like another Joker film comes out after this and they go, we want to take a different route. You can still reference this origin film because you just simply state, the Asylum Joker is the one we're going from here. The man who just has no past. It's just Arthur Fleck, who's now no longer there. It's Joker, right?
There is also a theory going around that this Joker goes on to inspire the actual Joker that Batman comes up against, because like the age difference would be really, really hard to justify going forward.
And we said it on the first rendition. I love how we're bringing this up.
Yeah,
we said on the first rendition of why I love this movie so much, and especially as like a big Joker fan, because it's the first time ever that they put the Joker at the forefront. It's always been Batman first, Joker came second. Right? This time in this origin, it was Joker who came first. It was Joker who inspired the death of Batman's parents to eventually be, and this is where if they were to do a follow-on in the universe, it would be based on a Batman who knows why he's Batman because of the Joker. Whereas in Nolan's adaptation, in whatever Jared Leto's fucking one was going to do, any other cinematic Batman origin that's happened, most of them, some of the comics have touched on the fact that a clown killed his parents, but the canon
Not
one,
really.
the ones that really don't get picked up much,
like one shots and
one shot,
just
but
variations.
The most common adaptation is Batman's parents were just killed by gangsters. Batman essentially became
no, not by gangsters, by robber.
By robber, right? But this one it's created this idea now that Joker was the reason Batman becomes Batman. So it's that change already of that base core ideology creates a whole different Batman. A whole completely different Batman.
Yeah.
Right? If they were to continue a universe like this. Like that is why that this movie is so powerful for me, because it literally flips the narrative on its head, but in such a good way.
It would be
such a good way.
It would be an interesting world because like Batman is named Batman because he has a fear of bats.
Yeah. Would he be Joker Man?
He would be Clown Man.
Clown Man.
He would realistically, because the guy wore a clown mask when he shot his parents, so he would realistically have a bigger phobia of clowns than he would bats. So he would become Clown Man.
Yeah. Well, see, but and the other
I would
reason,
be all about that.
The other reason why a Joker sequel in that universe would be bad as well is because effectively Joker has the full run of the town.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And theoretically has the full run until Batman grows up, which is like, I mean, Bruce in that film is about 8 to 10 years old. So that's at least 10 to 15 years, right? Yeah. Until Batman actualizes and is able to take on the Joker. So, but that also then suppresses the idea of all the rest of the rogues gallery of villains that is in the Batman universe. That stops the Penguin. That stops.
Well, he could be the inspiration for all of those.
That's what I'm saying.
Could
Like,
be,
if that's if we follow that theory where this Arthur Fleck,
instead of Batman being the inspiration, the Joker is. Yeah, okay.
Joker becomes the inspiration for Batman, but then this Joker essentially is the inspiration for bad people in Gotham.
Yeah.
So
and
he brings out the Penguin.
He brings out like Riddler.
Riddler
right?
And Two-Face.
I think that
because this Joker is an ideology.
Like
right?
you said,
the
ideology has taken over Gotham, and it feels like they're in control. But they're not in control to the point where it doesn't keep him from cuffs. He ends up in the mental institution at the end of the movie. And whether you want to say it's an interpretation or it's his own version of events, he still ends up there with the knowledge of what's happened previously. So obviously at some point he gets arrested and put in what we're assuming is their version of Arkham Asylum.
Yeah.
Right? So at some point, authority does take back over control in some way of Gotham. And the legions of people that the Joker inspires aren't enough to protect him.
Yep.
So at some point, Gotham, I think, would go back to a sense of normality, but with this undercurrent of there could be an uprising at any time.
Yep. Also, can I just pause the podcast real quick? Dave, can you not take selfies when we're in the middle of recording, please? Like, just can you have some respect for the
I respect that you went to Snapchat face as well.
Thank you.
That's how I knew, and that's why I'm asking you to not.
The eyebrows came up, and
like we don't have a lot of rules on Pie Party. Can we make that one of them though? Like, no selfies.
But he's putting out the grams or the Snapchats or whatever. But yeah, I think like there's having that undercurrent, and like it would be interesting to see even a movie just called Gotham.
Yeah.
In like
I can get behind that.
5 to 10 years after the events of this movie, Joker is locked up the entirety of this time, but it could be like the spurning off point of like all of this rogues gallery. Like we get inclinations of like the Riddler, the Penguin, Two-Face, like all these people taking their positions in the power vacuum created with the Joker getting removed from that society. But that undercurrent of we are the downtrodden and fuck the rich and fuck the privilege and fuck these people, having that as just this simmering, bubbling thing for like the 10 years until it takes, like you said, until Batman comes to prominence, would be a fucking fascinating movie to watch.
That would also solve some of the inherent problems with the Joker in this film. So one of my questions is Joker an accurate presentation of the character? And I would argue it isn't. Because the Joker, his quote-unquote superpower is social engineering, right? His quote-unquote superpower is being able to manipulate people to do things they wouldn't otherwise do. The quintessential character for this is Harley Quinzel, right?
Yep.
She was a fully trained, fully qualified psychologist, and he manipulates her into going off her nana and going full on Jack's crackers and putting on the makeup, and now we're getting a Harley Quinn movie. But so having him kind of locked up for 10 years, he could be around psychologists and interacting with these people. And that's his primary point of interaction with the outside world, with other humans, is fully qualified psych. So he could learn about, in 10 years, he could learn about, human interactions at that level and develop this power, quote unquote, of social engineering in this period of time to come out in a Gotham movie as a fully actualized Joker.
Well, I think that's another thing too that a lot of people are brought up as an issue with this movie is like, he is the clown prince of crime.
Yeah.
He is supposed to be a smart fucking dude.
Exactly.
But Arthur Fleck is not a smart fucking dude. He kind of stumbles his way into being the Joker in a way.
That's it, yeah.
Like he kills those guys, an uprising starts without his knowledge until he sees it on TV, and then he's like, oh, people are taking notice.
Yeah.
He goes to the rally.
Even then, he doesn't really notice until he's in the cop car at the end of the movie.
Yeah, like
being taken away from the
you
TV
get little
studio.
bits and pieces, like when he goes to the rally outside the...
Oh, yeah, that's true.
where he
No, I
meets
forgot about that, yeah.
Arthur, what's his name? Thomas Wayne for the first time.
Yeah.
But you get little bits and pieces of him just acknowledging the fact that he started this. But I think like that's a good sort of way to... If he does spend the next 10 years of his life around psychiatrists on a weekly or daily basis, he's going to pick up stuff from them where it's like, okay, I have learned through, I guess, osmosis or just like the techniques. Like if he recognizes patterns in the way these people approach him, he's going to understand the way, like this, the psychiatric method, and then he can like twist that in his own mind to like then, because like he is really a cerebral match for Batman, not a physical match. He should
that's always the point.
That's always
never
been
be
the
a
case.
physical
Always the
match.
point.
Yeah, exactly. So if he learns these sort of techniques from being incarcerated in Arkham for so long, and then eventually whether he escapes or like whatever would happen in the ensuing years, he comes out a much more well-rounded, smarter, more ruthless character. And that's where we get the Joker that we get in most of Batman lore, is someone who has been studied by but also studies psychology on a really, really in-depth basis.
And I think you get, and like you said there, like you get it sprinkled throughout because this isn't a Joker film; it's an Arthur Fleck film.
It is, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and I think it's always the distinction you've got to make when people come into this and they go, "Oh, no shit, Heath Ledger's Joker's better." Like, no shit, Heath Ledger's Joker's better because that's a Joker film.
the Joker.
Right? He's literally portraying a Joker probably 15 years after he got out of Arkham, like right there. But this is an origin. This is an Arthur Fleck film. This is about a man who got so beaten down to a point where he becomes this symbol of Joker. But literally when he becomes it is in that final 15 minutes of this film, and it's like literally the first ever rendition of it. Because he might spend 10 years in the asylum becoming what we see as Heath Ledger.
Yeah.
But I think the key thing that this film does is that it sprinkles this idea of, in the first act we see a man so downtrodden and no confidence. Throughout the film, he builds confidence based on the things of committing crime and realizing that he's got a taste for it. Till by the end of the film, he's a man who is like he exudes confidence in everything he says and does, whether it's because he's off the meds now and like that suppressed all that kind of stuff. But you get that pure, confident Arthur Fleck / Joker as he's making his way to Murray's show.
Yep.
And then as he sits down, and then confidence literally is personified with how he approaches the woman and kisses her on the lips.
Yeah.
Like that to me could not scream more confident. And then you juxtaposition that against a man who was so like apprehensive to approach his boss about like why would you like break a sign, like, oh, but then he questioned himself in that whole moral scene there, like, no, these kids stole my shit, but I'm just going to listen to you anyway. He was a man devoid of complete confidence there, to a point where in this end of this third act he's a man now exuding it, and it all happens in a very small time frame. Imagine what would happen in 10 years that he spends in an asylum, already filled with such confidence that he knows there's a world out there waiting for him that follows his every bait and breath. Now he picks up the psychology. That's why I believe it's such a perfect origin, because it can be extrapolated to that Joker there, to this masterful Joker.
But
right?
so the problem then is, but the problem still remains with that. Like, in order to fix that, you would have to make another movie, which is something that we don't want. Right, that's what I'm saying. Like,
it's hard, but like,
therefore the problem remains: is this an accurate presentation of the Joker? No, it's not.
It's not, because it's not Joker.
Because it's not Joker, and that's okay.
Now, you know what I'd be okay with?
What?
Even just a follow-up comic.
Something that isn't a film.
Yeah, don't go full out on a movie, but just like if it's a DC one-shot, just acknowledge that it's like this is the fallout from the birth of the Joker on that on that night.
Yeah.
Because you have the birth of the Joker and the birth of Batman on the same night. And we established it. And like I said, I wasn't the biggest fan of having that scene.
I know we said in the first step,
movie.
and I'm going to reiterate it again. That scene will go down in the annals because
No,
it's
it won't.
Like from
really
the way
won't.
it was shot, the soundtrack to like this literal symbolism of that, because it's symbolic to a person who knows the comics. It's not symbolic to a person who
But it
literally
won't
just
go
goes
down
and
in
watches
the annals
movies.
of history, because shot for shot, it was the exact same way Bruce's parents get killed that literally everybody does.
But that's something like
the shot list for that was written in comics for the last 50
no
years.
shit, and then for that reason alone, it's something that you just don't change. Then, right? It's almost like
But
but it's public domain information.
Its
You can't copyright
its
it.
entire edition, and I think I said this in the first podcast as well. It felt like a studio note.
It did.
It's
Yeah.
like
make note of it. Yeah.
we have to have this in the movie at some point. We need Bruce Wayne's parents being killed.
Yeah.
That has to be a part of this. I'm like, you could have
But
done
where
that.
they did it differently,
I would have, I would have loved. All they needed, and this is like for the purest comic book fans and the people that understand the Batman lore, have Bruce Wayne and his parents leaving the film, and all you do is pan up to the marquee that says, it's a Zorro movie. Everyone at that point in the theater that knows the Batman origin knows exactly what happens next, and that's all you need to do.
Yeah.
That's all that needed to be done. You can drop that, and then you can have an extra scene of him in front of that crowd. And like I said, the most iconic shot, and the shot that still gives me goosebumps to this day when I think about it, is him putting his fingers in his mouth and pulling the blood smile out.
Yeah.
It is fucking perfection when it comes to...
You can have your cake and eat it too, because you just said it. Like,
I know,
it's
I know.
a studio note to make note of it, but
Yeah.
it's almost ancillary completely to the fact that that's the birth of Joker in
I
that
know.
scene.
It is... But that's the problem. It's like this movie is devoid of ancillary scenes, and it tacks one on.
Okay,
right
yeah,
at the
fair
end.
enough.
does,
All
yeah,
right,
that's
It
yeah.
does. Like I said, all you need, just have them walking, like coming out of the theater.
Or all you
in
needed was
distress,
just
and it pans up and it says, the gay blade of Zorro, and everyone knows in the original.
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
In the original comic, that is the movie they left.
Yep.
The night that the Waynes.
Okay,
Got killed.
I agree with that.
Also,
I agree
to
with
a
that.
certain
That's
degree, it kind of deflates the film a little bit, because up until this point, I really thought that the depiction of Thomas Wayne, right, Bruce Wayne's dad, was super interesting, because we never really see Thomas Wayne getting depicted in any other
As a
way.
prick.
Yeah, you don't get him, yeah.
Right. But because the only time we've ever seen Thomas and Martha Wayne in any franchise of any film, TV, video game, doesn't matter. It's always been through the lens of Batman talking about his parents, and he wears
they're-
rose-colored glasses.
And they're
I was
like,
just about to
his parents.
say, yeah.
purely philanthropic. They're
Purely
always.
they were They were
doing
saints.
stuff.
They were saints.
They're
They were beautiful
building
people.
trains.
And they would take it. They were ripped away by the evils of Gotham, and even though they wanted to help Gotham, and it was very much like a Jesus died for our sins type of thing. Where this film was like, no, they're rich people. They're rich assholes. Right, and they really they might have a vision for Gotham, but their vision is to ultimately benefit them and their progeny. Right, their vision for Gotham is, we're going to make a fuck ton of money. Right, fuck you.
Yeah.
Right, I'm getting mine.
But that's why it's a good thing, because we've had this history of now where we've seen.
So it deflates the tone of the film, because they built him up to be this bad guy, and suddenly we're meant to feel sorry for them for being murdered.
I think we're supposed to feel sorry for Bruce.
Yeah.
I get. Yeah,
But I think that
where
like, if you can do that scene. So like as I said, you just have them walking out and you pan up to the marquee.
Yeah.
You go back to the Joker.
Yeah.
Then at the end of the very end of the film, when he's back in the psych ward, and he starts laughing, and then there was that bit where it splices in. Bruce Wayne standing over the bodies of his parents.
it's feeling sorry for Bruce.
All you need to do is you get rid of the scene where they get shot, but you still include that because from context, people know exactly what that means.
Yep.
So you still have that. You still have the image of him standing over his dead parents in the alley. You get that. You don't need the dude in the clown mask following them down the alleyway and shooting them. Him, especially the clown, saying, "Hey Wayne, you get what you fucking deserve." Bang.
Yeah.
To me, like I said, it just felt like a studio note of them being like, "We need to add this. It needs to be a part of the movie."
I agree with you.
And it was the same thing when, and I said this in the first fucking podcast as well, when he goes to the Wayne Manor and the kid says his name is Bruce, and people in my theater were like, "Oh, what?
Like, are you
get
fucking
the fuck out of
shocked?
Here.
Of
what are you doing?
What universe is this?"
I know, it just did my head. I'm just like,
but I kinda
obviously that is the fucking, like, who else would it be?
I get the shock because
Jack Wayne?
Yeah.
I get the shock because it's obviously literally the first time that we've seen Joker become before Bruce, right? So
Yes.
you're sitting there going, based on what I know of Bruce Wayne, like he has literally had no interaction. We assume Joker literally is also a kid at the exact same time Bruce Wayne is a kid.
Roughly,
'Cause
yeah.
in the way that they're always
I mean, they
depicted
did that
films,
in the fucking
they're the same age.
TV show Gotham.
Yeah, they're always the same age, right?
Yeah.
So, but in this one, we're just seeing this guy Arthur Fleck, who we know becomes Joker, and we see this kid, and we just go, "There's no way that can be Bruce, really," because everything we know already is that Joker comes last afterwards.
Yeah.
Just harkening back to that, I completely agree with you. Actually, you're 100% right. Like you could do away with the actual death scene because it is something that's already been done. Takes away from that.
You can inspire it, and then like anyone that is confused by that scene, go on YouTube. Go on
Not even
Wikipedia.
confused because I think it does get answered with the laughing track over. It's literally just standing over.
Yeah,
because then
exactly. Like it's such.
you don't need steps 3 to 7. You already have one with them showing the Zorro, and then step 10 being like, oh, obviously they died because Bruce is now standing over dead bodies.
Bruce standing over their bodies. It's such a thing to me. Like it's just such an unnecessary 2 minutes of the film.
Yeah,
that I would much rather spend with Joker.
Yeah, I agree with you. No, you're 100%.
And,
You're 100% right.
And the reaction he's getting from that crowd at that point.
Yeah,
like that is such a much more interesting thing to explore. And like even if you didn't have that 2 minutes spent on the Joker or the Waynes, just have some more of the city going to chaos.
Yeah.
Have some, just explore more of that, because that was one of the most fascinating things of this city. And you get in the first scene of it's the garbage strike. The streets are filled with garbage. And like you said, with Thomas Wayne being a prick in this movie, he feels that the regular people, the people that aren't as well off as he is, are jokers. And you can assume from a thematic standpoint that he sees them as garbage and he wants to clean up the streets. Yeah. So by the end of the movie, the streets are overflowing with garbage in a sense. That's a nice little thematic thing. And and one more scene of them, looting or, fucking flipping over cop cars or whatever.
Real dystopian looking fucking
would
city.
sort of add to that thematic sort of crescendo, and then you end with him pulling the blood out and doing the Joker smile, and we cut to him in the asylum however many years, months, whatever later. That to me would really just put a fucking really good bow on the end of this film. Yeah. And would just wrap it up in a nice, neat way.
And it also ties in, just to really piggyback off John just then, the depiction of Thomas Wayne being a bad person, all that kind of stuff. If we were to also adopt the theory that all this takes place in his head, and maybe Thomas Wayne isn't actually a prick, but because we see this through the lens of Arthur Fleck this entire time, he's the one who really perceives this world to be a dystopian future or really crumbled. I mean, he's the one who perceives Thomas, and obviously we see the riots and we see the garbage, right? And we're meant to believe that's actually happening. But it could also still fall into the veil of this is what happens in his head. Yeah. Right.
See, so the only reason why I would disagree with that is because of the scene with the lady, right? That's because that would require him to acknowledge, I've been hallucinating this woman this entire time, and that's kind of that's way too much of an action. Fair. That's way too much of a realization at that point.
I was stretching.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can piggyback off that really easily. The first interaction he has with Thomas Wayne, aside from his mum writing all those letters, is he sees him on TV, calling him directly, without Thomas Wayne realizing it, calling him a joker. Yeah. So from that point on, his interpretation of that person would be tainted.
Yeah.
Because he would be like, okay, this guy thinks I'm a joker for basically
He took it
because
personally.
and
Yeah.
according to him and probably according to a lot of people, him defending himself on the subway was the right thing to do because it was self-defense.
Yes.
Even though technically, and you're the lawyer here, self-defense, it has to be sort of equal levels of
Yeah. And this is like, and this will lead.
fist via gun isn't self-defense.
And this will lead into like, I don't know whether it's another discussion, but we discussed on the first one of why this Joker, like it handles its message as well.
I see.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Well, hold on. But like, because in that scene there is where we begin to lose connection with our association with Arthur. So that first act, we all agree, it's deliberately depicting a person that anyone can mask themselves over. It's a blank canvas of despair, right? I'm a person that's been in a job and they've been like beaten and by my boss hates me. The people in my public don't respect what I do.
I feel like I got fired for no reason.
Anyone gets that. You begin to lose that when you see him move away from self-defense, chase down that dude, shoot him in the back, and then enjoy it.
Yes.
From that point on, it's a downward slope for him and an upward slope for us, and we distance. We go, all right, I'm now no longer seeing myself in Arthur. No. I'm beginning to lose sympathy for this man as he continues to, follow down this path of like, oh, now he's getting more and more destructive.
Yep.
Right? He's becoming less and less of the unconfident kind of canvas man we saw in that first act. From the second act onwards, it's a man that we don't associate with, which is exactly what the film needed to do in order to address the messages it was going to address from that point on.
Yep.
Had it made us really, really, really connect with Arthur to a point where we literally saw ourselves in him, then we would have this real big social issue that apparently everyone in the film before it came out was like, we're worried about this because it's just going to romanticize serial killers.
So this brings me to like a few questions that I have that I wanted to ask you too about the film.
Yep.
So the first one being really like we're talking about that scene with the riots and stuff like that. It seemed like I got the feeling, especially because you include the death of Thomas Wayne, it feels like it's a film that draws the conclusion that those who seek the redistribution of wealth are violent savages. It seems to be kind of a question that it makes, because ultimately that's what the rioters want, is they don't want it. They don't want this wealth inequality, right? And so it seems like it was saying if you are for kind of this sort of fundamental shift in the way our social system, our economy works, you're a violent savage, is what it felt like it was saying.
I think by an extension, it's also saying that, and of course, films often mirror current events, even though this is based in the 80s.
Yeah.
Is there the possibility for wealth distribution without violent uprising?
Yeah. Yeah.
This
film says it isn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right?
I don't think that
Yeah.
this is a movie that's going to be like policy and procedure within Congress or within the houses of fucking lawmakers is going to make a difference.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be like people taking to the streets, whether violently or just in mass protest. It's going to get done.
Well, it says mass protest doesn't work because it goes to that point where it needs to bubble over into violence.
Yeah, it already shows you.
But also,
working,
films are a mirror, but also an exaggeration.
Yeah, no, that's true.
So at the same time, it can be like their version of people rising up and looting could just be our version in the real world of mass protest and outrage on social. Like literally the 2019 version of looting the TV store is getting on Twitter and starting a hashtag.
Yeah,
that is this century's version of because there's no value in going down the street and smashing a window and stealing a television.
Yeah,
but there is value in a hashtag that catches on, and especially with like this current culture of like cancel culture, you can make a big difference.
Yep.
If you just get a small movement to attract the right people.
Yeah.
So I think that the way that it mirrors society in this day and age, and obviously right now the mass one of the big the big discussion points is the redistribution of wealth. So it's trying to make a point of this will not take a small selection of people. This will take basically everybody.
Yeah.
That need to stand up and do something about it. So it is an interesting sort of like where is the exaggeration line drawn in this film, and how far do we cross that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like whether it does, I guess you could argue it does it directly because, like you just said, the film shows you that protesting doesn't work. It shows you that by just speaking up, it doesn't work. What it does show you is that it just needs that one man. kind of thing. That one man to just do something really out of the realms of what normal people would do. And then it falls into like a very classic business model of like, you need the early adopters before you get the majority to take onto something. Right?
Well, yeah, but it does that in a very it follows a very Randian approach to that.
Yeah.
In that it's the strong man, it's the individual, right? Which is a very American way to approach that.
Oh yeah, but it falls
story.
within.
But this
that.
is an American film, so I understand that. Like, within its cultural, within the American cultural framework, that makes sense.
Yeah. So and that's what I believe you can say that, right? You can say it does. It not tries to do that, but it does that in the sense that it does all that. It shows you the early adopter being Arthur Fleck, this man who is like everyone else in the protest, but he's just the one who has enough of a reason to go, fuck you. All right, I'm gonna go jump over this barricade. I'm gonna kill this man, and I'm gonna do it without remorse. And then enough people will look at that and go, he did it. We're going to do it. Because those are the people that have, which are people who are like most people, who will go to the length of protest, but essentially won't be stupid enough to cross that line.
No. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that what I'm saying this film does is it says that all of those people are already violent savages. They just need permission to be violent savages,
and
which is
unfortunately that fits within the Joker ideology that we've all just discussed.
But that's what I mean. Like, I feel like that's the message that the film, that's a question I'm asking. Does the film send that message?
It does, but so does Nolan's Joker.
I don't think it does too much.
So does Nolan's Joker. Nolan's Joker literally has that ideology too, where it's just like everyone's mad.
Yeah.
All you need is a push.
Yeah.
Right. Like this film just does it in a very, very on the nose, like literally in your face way, right? Which is like it's big controversy, but it essentially has done the exact same thing that Nolan's Joker has done.
Which leads me into the next question, right? Are the crimes of the Joker glorified in this film? And this was like a really very controversial thing about this film. Before it came out, when we heard about trailers and stuff, and even people who've seen it have said, yes, no, this is a controversial point. Does the film glorify the Joker's actions? Which we've all said it shouldn't, right? It's sort of like...
It shouldn't, and
the triple homicide... Like, the first act, I agree with you. The first act is trying to get you to build sympathy with the Joker, and then they play with that by then having the triple homicide. And I'm okay with that. I'm really okay with a movie doing that. Like, because it's supposed to be kind of a disgusting moment, and that's okay. You're allowed to make a movie that makes you feel disgusted. That's art, right? That's, art should make you feel things. Whether those are positive or negative is irrelevant. But does this film go on and go, no, actually, you know what? Like, yeah, okay, that triple homicide might have been a bit too far, but you know what? Killing people, right, is not a bad idea.
No.
I feel like that's what I mean.
And for
Are the crimes of the Joker glorified?
For two reasons it doesn't. One, for what we just said, after that first act, you no longer see yourself in the Joker. That's one reason why you don't find these to be glorified. The second reason is how the film depicts the killings. They're very visceral and they make you disgusted.
Absolutely.
If you didn't feel disgusted, then that would be a question of yourself.
Absolutely. And if I can play devil's advocate for a moment, right? So the only flip side to that being is that, again, this is an American film for an American audience, and I really think we have to really kind of state that we're Australians watching a film, so we're kind of looking in from the outside, right? Kind of a way, like sort of a positive reinforcement within American society is fame. If you do something and become famous, that is society validating what you do. And so in this film, Joker commits a triple homicide, which is then validated by the fact that he inspires society to kind of like start wearing clown masks and shit like that. So basically he becomes quote unquote famous. And that's sort of within an American context, that is him being validated for his actions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
I don't think the crimes of the Joker are glorified, but I feel like if we don't talk about it, we're gonna, we're not doing.
You're right, but because you put it under the veil of the fact that it's specific. Like you make an inference by saying it's specifically tailored to the American market.
That's because I think it is. I think this is an American movie for Americans.
It's very hard for Australians to associate people getting shot on a subway, because the worst thing that's happened to me on a subway was someone asked me for darts.
Yeah.
Can I have a sticky, bro? So it is kind of hard to like associate with that level of like, and like you said, it is very visceral and gratuitous, and every moment of violence in this movie is really, really shocking.
Yeah.
Because like it does get the R rating for violence, but it's like 3 moments.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
the subway, it's his workmate, and then it's the final bit of the movie. In between, you have this build up and this tension, and I did say in my review, this movie is like watching a piece of rope be stretched.
Yeah.
The entire time, and it's like watching the outside bits of the rope fray bit by bit until you get to that center bit, and it just snaps. And that's the finality of this movie is that the rope eventually does break, and it really is like there are moments of violence in the movie, and sure you could look at it as like they're being, glorified but it's more that they're gratuitous and that they're supposed to shock you. Like I said. After he kills the 3 guys in the subway, you should hopefully stop relating to Arthur.
Like obviously you should be then stragglers still, but it's like the majority, the way it's designed, but I think, are meant to disconnect.
I think that I don't know if I'm just talking out of my arse here. I could be, but
that's Pint Party, buddy. We're all talking.
That's a good point.
Assholes.
The 3 kills almost act like the 3 acts of this movie. The first kill is so sudden; it's the headshot. The second kill is 2 body shots, and it takes, it's a bit more calculated and it's a bit more, it's a bit slower. The third act is really, really drawn out. The third kill is really, really drawn out, and it takes you that bit for him to get to him stalking the guy finally on the subway, because you have that moment where they're both at the door of each of their cars on the subway, and you have to know that one of them or both of them are going to have to make a decision. Do you stay on the car with witnesses, or do you make the run for it? And the fact that Arthur chooses to chase him out onto the platform and gun him down from behind.
At that point, it's premeditated. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, that's where you begin the disconnect.
That kind of really, I don't know. I could be talking
that's
about
such a movie.
It could be mirroring the 3 acts of this film. Because the first act is justified.
Yeah.
To an extent. Because he's being attacked and that's his only mode of defense is the gun. He shouldn't have the gun, but he's got the fucking gun. The second one was this guy has already seen what's happened to the first guy. He probably isn't going to keep kicking you on the ground. He's probably going to run the fuck away. And you could honestly give him the right to do that. And you might get away with it because you're wearing clown makeup, and it's really going to be hard to recognize you.
Understanding that this is an American film, that first kill is Arthur Fleck invoking castle doctrine. Which, for people who don't know, there are certain states within the United States who have a thing within their legislation called castle doctrine, which is that a man's home is his castle and has a right to defend their home. So basically, the way it breaks down is that you have the right in certain states in America. If someone breaks into your house, you have the right to shoot at them and use lethal force against a person coming into your home. Is castle doctrine.
Is this the same as the Florida?
There's a similar law called stand your ground.
That's it. Yes, thank you. The stand your ground law. Yeah.
And this is supposed to invoke those kinds of things. So stand your ground is a similar thing that applies outside of the home, but the same kind of philosophy kind of applies. The idea being that you have the right to defend your body and your person, and those and your family and those with you
with deadly force.
With deadly force,
right?
And so we're not so here in Australia we have similar self-defense things, but we call it exercising reasonable force is what it's called. And so if someone punches you in the face, you can punch them in the face,
but you can't stab them.
You can't stab them. You can't keep punching them until they die. Right? The idea is you're just supposed to try and get them away from you.
The best,
right? But in America, stand your ground means if someone punches you in the face, you can shoot them in the head.
Just on Criminal 101, if we were to break it down like that, the 3 different stages, that first one, if it were to go to trial, he'd have a better case. Had he just killed the one, first one, he'd probably walk away.
That's what I mean, because you can invoke stand your ground.
You invoke stand your ground, and here you'd just be like, it was reasonable force, because in that moment, in that period of time, he could genuinely make a case being like, had I not done it, they would have killed me. I had to invoke. Then he'd be like, I didn't intend to shoot him in the head. Once you've gotten rid of mens rea, you're fine. Okay, then it becomes a very easier case of self-defense. Then you go into Ricki's analysis, second one being the second act, third one being the death, and all that kind of stuff. That's beginning, and if we then now impose our theory of the fact that we begin disconnect in this very scene, you connect with the first death, you question that second one, and you feel disgust in that third death. Right?
Yeah.
In that one scene,
you have fucking ass, but I'll take it.
You've just fallen away from Arthur Fleck.
Yeah,
had he had just killed the one,
Yep.
and then had he not done the other 2, and then maybe killed others further down the line, that disconnect wouldn't have been so prominent.
Yeah.
That needed these 3 deaths told in those 3 different ways in order for you to be like, at the end of that, when you get in the bathroom dancing, you're sitting there going, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
That's fucked up. He's dancing here because
Yeah.
he's just done that.
But you're absolutely right. I think you're right. I think the scene also serves to foreshadow the rest of the film. I think you're absolutely right.
Damn it, you're a movie buff over here.
Todd Phillips, if I'm wrong, at me. If I'm right,
So-
also at me.
Yeah, so I want to wrap this up soon. So I kind of want to move through. Like, I've got a couple more questions. So the final, really, my next big question is, the next biggest one was, is this a film that enforces a stereotype that all people with a mental illness are dangerous?
Now, I'm glad we're talking about mental illness.
Oh boy!
Because this is a thing that we've seen in media before. This is why I'm bringing it up, because, like, I mean, this was a big problem with Criminal Minds. Every episode, it was a person with a mental illness committing crimes. Every time we see and especially, again, like I said, this is an American film in an American context. Whenever we hear conversations around mass shooters in America, and this is a thing that American audiences will resonate with. Whenever they talk about mass shooters, it's the person had a mental illness and we should feel sorry for them for killing 50 people.
Instead of how did they get a gun?
Instead of why the fuck did they have a gun, and go, you know what, I'm going to shoot at a
Maybe that's a
concert
conversation we
across
should
the
have.
street. Right?
I think I said this in the previous podcast we tried to record.
I know I had a big one on this.
But
first.
I did say that you have to take into context the time in which this movie takes place.
Yep.
Being the 80s, the whole mental illness thing is obviously not as prominent as it is now. So I feel like there are no real positive interpretations of mental illness in this film. Because like the only other really mentally ill person we see is the guy strapped down to the bed when he's in the elevator in Arkham. Just
and
like
his mother.
And his mum, who's a psycho bitch. But that dude's having like a full-on spasm.
Yeah.
So, and we never really see any other patients.
No.
So, I would try to make an argument that maybe, like Zazie Beetz could be someone who suffers from depression. Or
I was going to
anxiety.
say, you could make a case that they all resemble something, but the biggest one obviously is Arthur.
Yeah, so I don't think it tries to glorify or
I don't think it does.
Not
And
or really
reinforce.
okay, yeah, reinforce is a better word there. Sorry, you're right. I don't think it purposely tries to reinforce that. I just think it is the way the narrative had to be told to get to a point where we had a realistic interpretation of how the Joker would potentially come about in a day
like today.
in a world that it makes sense. Because like I don't know if you guys have come across the Patton Oswalt theory from The Dark Knight.
No.
It's fucking fascinating. Okay, in that one, he posits that the Joker, the Heath Ledger Joker, is ex-Spec Ops or Black Ops.
Yes. Okay.
Because he has knowledge of interrogation techniques. When he says to Batman, don't go for the head first, it makes the victim fuzzy. The next blow won't be felt as much. Also, when he talks about when a truck full of soldiers gets blown up, no one bats an eye, but when you go after one little mare, everyone loses their minds.
Yeah.
So the theory is that he was either paramilitary or Black Ops, got disavowed or abandoned by the American government, survived whatever situation he was in, whether it was a prisoner of war or whatever, or went through a bunch of torture.
Another adaptation of mental
and
illness.
the torture could explain the cuts on his cheeks. And then his way to deal with that was to go into that psychosis and become the Joker and think that everybody has that one push that will take them to that place. So that is a way for that movie, and I believe in that sort of universe that Nolan set up. I can see that happening. I can believe that.
Yeah, that's grounded in some realism, which is what Nolan's trying to go for. Yeah.
In this universe, I feel that to get to the point where the Joker becomes the Joker, you need that backing of, okay, this guy... Because if you just do it as a guy, him turning into the Joker doesn't make any real sense.
No.
You have to have that... come at that from the perspective of this guy has a mental illness, but he lives in a society that at the time did not care for people with the mental illness the way that they do now and the way that they should have back then. So you get to that point because of the negligence of society. I don't think that it reinforces the fact that it more reinforces the fact that mental illness has come, or mental illness awareness and treatment has come a long way in the preceding years.
Yeah.
For me, that's the best positive spin I can put on it.
And
I'm trying real hard here.
we obviously discussed it at nauseum and in very great detail in the first time we did this. And because I said something similar to that as well. Like, the movie obviously embeds itself in foundation upon mental illness. Like, it makes it prominent with the fact that obviously Arthur has a mental illness, but it's based on the fact that he has that laugh, and it makes it very clear that it's a mental illness.
Yeah.
But he obviously has a bunch more, and his mum as well.
Yep.
But it goes back to there's a big thesis kind of message that has circulated across the socials about what this film has inferred, and it's the idea is that it takes this perspective of people, or at least media believes serial killers are born. They're born predisposed to become that way, and they claim that as the mental illness, right? Because they're predisposed. What this film does is that Arthur isn't born with the mental illness. It's beat into him. His mental illness and the reason he becomes Joker is by a pure nurture rather than it is nature.
Yeah.
Right? It's shown in the upbringing that he has, and then in the ambiguous upbringing he has with his mentally ill mother, and then the way he's treated with a mental illness in the workforce, and then how that's imbued with the psychologist just not respecting him whatsoever when he comes to him being like, all I have are negative thoughts, right? Beat by beat, this film shows you a man who didn't start as the Joker, who didn't start with any ill intent to kill or had any predisposition to violence, but it was beat into him. But it was beat into him in ways that show you, in the first act, in very real ways that happen in America and across the world, where it's very common to, like, you know, find street bashings like that. But then it makes it very not comical. I use comical in the sense that it's unreal, in then how he gets beaten further and further throughout the film. But it shows you, that's the message it gets across with mental illness here, and specifically juxtapositioned against how media perceives serial killers to be born. It shows you that they're not. At least this, what we deem Joker as the greatest villain of all time, wasn't born to be the greatest villain of all time.
And again,
right?
from an American context, I think that's a comment on, like, when you hear a lot of people, again, like, I keep bringing it back to mass shooters, but I feel like, again, this film is a product of its time, which is like today. Even though it's set in the 80s, I think it's talking about things today.
Yep.
A lot of the times when you hear about American politicians talk about mass shooters, or not even mass shooters, but like people who use guns in quote unquote bad ways, right? It's people with dark hearts, people with dark minds, and again, this idea that people are born evil is sort of what is sort of
and that's how media perceives it and wants you to believe
exactly.
it. Because
and so
it's just an easy way of justifying
exactly. And this film is counter to that by saying no. You know, evil isn't born. People aren't born evil. They're built evil.
Yeah, they're nurtured to evil via whether it's like you're literally told that way, or whether it's just because society does not understand you.
Yeah.
Right. That's the message I believe this film gets across, and I believe it gets across well.
Yeah.
Right.
It does. You have to sort of wade through a little bit of bullshit.
Yeah.
To get to that point.
Yeah.
But I think, like, any reasonable person that goes to see this movie should be able to see its message pretty clearly.
Yeah.
It should not be, and it was brought up so much in the lead up to this movie by, I'm assuming, a bunch of people on Twitter who hadn't seen the movie yet. They just heard reviews and like heard what the movie was about, and it was like, if you remove the IP of this movie, it does play like the birth of every mass shooter that, like, prominent mass shooter in America.
Yeah,
it's white male, downtrodden, mental illness, has access to a gun, shoots a bunch of people. That is essentially the narrative that every news outlet spins whenever they have a mass shooter in America.
Yeah.
Whereas the narrative should be, guy had $500, went to Walmart and bought a fucking gun. Maybe we should change that. But I won't get too political. But you have to, like, and once people saw the film, I heard all that talk dry the fuck up.
Yeah, it was very quick once
it was like,
dropped.
oh, maybe you should wait till you see a piece of media before you fucking judge it, you dickheads. God, I hate Twitter. But any reasonable person should go into this movie and walk out of it, Arthur Fleck is the villain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you walk out of that thinking that.
Yeah.
You don't start that way.
You should not relate to this guy. If you do, maybe go see someone about that. And 3, we live in a society. We really do.
Well, what I liked about what you
I
said
hate that meme.
last time, just getting into kind of like final thoughts. What I liked
Yes.
about what you said last time is you didn't want this to become a broology movie.
Yes, the brolosophy.
Brolosophy movie, like, kind of like what happened. Like, perfect
What did I
example,
say to make
Fight Club. You said Fight
Yeah,
Club.
it's going to become the next Fight Club. It's going to
Yeah.
be on every like dorm room of every like freshman at college.
Yep.
For the next like 15 years.
Yep, or
for
on the
for
lock
wrong-
screen of people's mobile phones,
David.
or people buy the suits and then do snaps of them in the suit.
Yep.
Or
Your Halloween sorted this year, isn't it, mate?
Yep.
Yeah, you're going as the Joker, but it's for the wrong reasons. It's
Yeah.
because like the people that have those dorm posters, it's like, man, Tyler Durden is so fucking sick. I want to be exactly like him. No, he's a toxic person
Yeah. Same
who
people-
blows up 3 buildings.
Same people who have like Scarface posters.
Yeah, exactly. Like that dude is the fucking bad guy of
He's the
that
bad
movie.
guy in that movie.
Have you watched Scarface, or do you
Yeah.
think it's a cool poster? Tell me, please.
He
Because
chainsaws a person to death.
He
for
does.
fuck's sake.
And he does literally a mountain of cocaine.
He does.
And shoots a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And he treats his girlfriend, who he basically steals from his boss, like shit.
Yep.
Watch Scarface, you idiots. It's a good movie about a bad person.
Yeah.
This is also a good movie about a bad person.
For sure.
Do not relate and do not idolize and do not put on a pedestal Arthur Fleck.
Yep.
Understand who he is. Analyze the movie as we have. Understand it. Appreciate it for a piece of art, but do not take it any deeper than that, because the minute you start doing that, you start working into problems in your own life. We don't want that. We want you to be happy. We want you to be healthy. We want you to appreciate art as art, but don't define your life by it.
Yeah.
How about that? Is that good?
Yep.
Can we end on that?
That's a
Can
good
we
one.
end on?
So yeah, that's a good final thought.
I think so.
Yeah, Dave,
I think so.
do you have any final thoughts you want to share?
No, I genuinely think we've hit them all.
I'm trying to remember how I popped you guys last podcast, because I literally both of you like had to get out of your chairs. You were laughing. What the fuck did I say?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Sometimes sometimes
Leave it just for us.
You never get lightning doesn't strike twice.
It was. It's annoying.
Right.
It's annoying.
But like my final thought for really about this
Bugger.
movie is that for me, ultimately, this film, like we've talked about the Joker or Arthur Fleck, is for me, this isn't a film about Arthur Fleck. This isn't a film about the Joker. It's not even an Arthur Fleck movie for me. This movie is really kind of following in the footsteps of and by the way, like in the depth of cinema, we're in the kiddie pool end with this movie, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
you're right. It's got a movie with some depth, but it's not that deep.
I may
but
have fucking.
this is that's kind of one of the ones you said. I was
Yeah,
following
yeah.
on
It
from.
was
a good
it
thought.
was wading pool philosophy. It was.
yeah. This is kiddie pool philosophy.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah.
Oh,
But for me, this isn't a film
go.
about
I'm
Arthur
trying.
Fleck. For me, this is a film about realistically, Joker is a mechanism to deliver a message about late stage capitalism and the downfall of American civilization, right? And to say, hey, like if we don't seriously consider how we run our society, it's going to fall apart and bad things are going to happen and like good people are going to die. And so that's for me, that's really what this movie is, right? It's and the writer wrote a comic book movie because that was the most effective way to get his message, I don't know if it's a he or she, get their message out into out into the American psyche.
Todd
Was-
Phillips, definitely a dude.
Yeah. No, did he write the movie? He directed
Yeah,
it.
he wrote it as well.
He wrote it as well. Okay, so
Wrote the
that's where I
screenplay as
think he
well.
was going. Yeah. I think,
one of 2 or 3 writers, but he wrote
Right.
he wrote it as well as directed it. But,
Yeah, right. Okay.
we definitely live in a society.
Yeah, right.
We definitely do.
And so with that, I think we'll wrap it up there. But if anything, we've talked about some serious issues. We've talked about we kind of talked about mental illness, and we got into some serious places. If any of that is you feel like you want to reach out and talk to someone about it, there are people out there who will help you. The first people you should first port of call should be to call Lifeline Australia on 13 11 14. That's 131114. They're available 24/7. Give them a call if you just want to have a chat. If you feel like you're having some mental health problems. But not everybody, talking on the phone can be, kind of an anxiety-inducing thing in its own right, and it's not something you really want to do. If you want to kind of reach out through the internet and kind of do it through a messaging kind of a way, another group you can talk to is Beyond Blue, which is a fantastic organization. You can reach out to them on beyondblue.org.au. That's beyondblue.org.au. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please share it on social media. Follow us on Spotify or on iTunes. Tell a friend about this episode. You can say, hey, I know you weren't into the other ones because they just made bum and fart jokes for an hour, but here's one where they kind of talk serious for an hour. Maybe this is the one you want to jump on board with.
Maybe.
Borrow
their phone.
Borrow their phone. And hit that follow button on our page on Spotify, or on iTunes.
And then give their phone back.
Yeah, I'm not going to yuck your yum. With that, this has been Pint Party. Cheers.
Cheers.
This is a Hartefact Network podcast. Find us at hartefactstudios.com.au.